And greetings from beautiful Augusta, Georgia, where I'm filming today in front of my grandfather's rose bush, which only in Augusta, Georgia would you have blooms in the middle or the late part of October. If that's because of climate change, well, guess what? I like climate change because those roses are beautiful. Now, folks, we've been talking about the U.S. Constitution, but we're going to veer off just a little bit for this weekend's video because I've been watching what's going on in kind of on the cultural scene, and I've got some observations that I want to share with you on that. Of course, we've seen the people protesting on the college campuses. We've seen the people protesting against the Confederate whatever that they wanted to take down. We've seen the women show up in Washington, D.C. Demanding, well, I'm not sure what the heck they're demanding at this point. And now I have to agree with General Kelly when he made his speech the other day in front of the press corps at the White House. Some things are sacred. A fallen American soldier, you don't politicize that. Now, they've politicized pretty much everything else. But that woman from Florida who looks like she came out of a, I don't know, rhinestone rodeo with that cowboy hat, despicable. Sorry. You know what? Back in the 1960s, those folks who were protesting, they were doing it for a good reason, and they made some sense. This stuff that I see now, none of it makes sense. None of it. But here's the thing, and here's what I've gotten from this, and here's what I want you to understand, is that this is a tiny little minority of folks that are getting out there and doing that. And the media is blowing it up to where it's some big story. And that's where I've got a problem. You know what? I stand with every last one of those protesters in terms of they have a First Amendment right to do what they're doing. And that's fine. I don't care. You know what? But you got to deal with the consequences of using your First Amendment rights. So, if a bunch of football players want to act like, you know the word, insert it, and ticket sales go down and people ain't watching the NFL anymore, that is a consequence of your action. Yes, you were allowed to do it, but we ain't watching you play anymore. Same thing with that feller who went up to Charlottesville, I reckon, and decided to march in a white supremacist parade. Somebody took his picture, put it on the internet, and he got fired. That's the consequence of using your First Amendment rights. You know what? I would have fired him too, because I don't want somebody like that working for me. Now, this is a minority of people, tiny bit, minority of people that are out there, they're doing this. But the news media wants to make it the biggest thing in the entire world. So here's what we're missing. Okay, for every one story about Madonna coming to Washington wearing a pussy hat, wanting to burn the White House down, why aren't there 5 stories about the fact that we are $20 trillion in debt and how that affects your wallet? Because it does, okay? For every time some idiot decides to hold a protest on a college campus, every time there's one story on that, why are there not 5 stories generated about the fact that the middle class are screwed when it comes to taxes? And I hate to stand with Bernie Sanders on this, and I know that I'm going to get called on it by a good friend of mine, but he is right. The 1% and the corporations do not pay their fair share of taxes. The ones who do are us, the middle class, and we don't have all those freaking deductions. We don't have that. It just comes out of our paycheck, all right? Number 3, for every story about who is this woman, Lena Dunham, I don't have cable, so I don't know. everything that she does, for every one story about her, why isn't there 5 stories about the fact that America has had a war economy for decades? Yes, folks, if suddenly world peace happened, we would go bankrupt. And that's something that you should be considering far more than who won Dancing with the Stars. And finally, for every story about, who is this woman, Jessica Simpson? No, it's not her. The woman with the large behind. Kardashian. For every one story about her, why isn't there 5 stories about the fact that the Clintons have gotten away with crime? And yes, I'm saying it. Anybody with half of a brain understands that you don't go from nobody in Arkansas to multi-millionaires in New York without, on a government salary, that is, without committing crimes, and we know that they have. Why isn't there news stories and headlines about the fact that they will never be prosecuted for what they've done? And they won't. They won't. Because if that ever happened, it would lance the boil in Washington, D.C., because they are all complicit. Not all. I take that back. Not all. Most of them are. They're complicit. Just like those folks who knew about Harvey Weinstein over there in Hollywood. Either they're playing the game or they knew about it. Period. Point blank. And so, you know what? You're probably thinking, well, I am one person and I do what I'm supposed to do. I go and I vote. What else? I mean, I'm one person. And I used to think that way. But you know what? I've said it before. One man, one person is not going to drain the swamp in Washington. Period. Not going to. So what can you do? Well, first, go and look at your congressperson and your senator and look at their record. If they have voted the way that you would have voted yourself, then support them. Support them. Do more than just put a sign on your yard and go out on November 10th and vote. Get out and actively support them. If they have not done, especially these idiots that said, I'm going to repeal Obamacare and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then they go to Washington, they do the exact opposite, then whoever their opposition is, work for them, help them. Do more than just put a sign in the front of your house. Folks, it is long past time. And again, in the 1960s, they had a good reason to protest. But in 2017, the protesters are pussies. The ones who really need to take action are the adults in the room, you and I. And it's going to take more than just going to the polls. We got to get behind the right people. We got to send them to Washington, D.C. and roll.